The champagne was sticky on my skin, the scent cloying and heavy in the air. But all I could taste was ash. 11 years. 11 years I'd been gone, a ghost in their lives. And now I was back, watching my sister, the radiant bride, twirl across the dance floor, blissfully unaware that the reckoning was about to begin. They thought they had erased me. They were wrong. My name is Madison, and this was my wedding present to them. If you have a sister, subscribe now. If you have a brother, subscribe now. If you have a family, subscribe now. It all started with a promise, a childhood pact sealed with intertwined pinkies and whispered vows under the summer sun. Sarah and I, sisters by chance, best friends by choice. We were inseparable, sharing secrets, dreams, and the unwavering belief that we would always have each other's backs. Growing up in our small town, life wasn't always easy. Our parents, struggling to make ends meet, worked tirelessly to provide for us, but the weight of their responsibilities often left Sarah and I feeling neglected. We found solace in each other, creating our own little world where laughter echoed and promises were sacred. Sarah was always the charismatic one, effortlessly drawing people in with her infectious smile and bubbly personality. I, on the other hand, was more reserved, content to observe from the sidelines, finding comfort in the quiet corners of our shared existence. But despite our differences, we were bound by an unbreakable bond of sisterhood, a connection that transcended blood and circumstance. Then came him, David. He was everything a girl could want, charming, handsome, and seemingly head over heels for Sarah. Their love story unfolded like a fairy tale, filled with stolen kisses under the moonlight and promises of forever. I was happy for them, genuinely thrilled that my sister had found someone who made her heart sing. But beneath the surface, a darkness was brewing, a subtle shift in the dynamics of our relationship that I failed to recognize until it was too late. David, with his disarming smile and carefully crafted facade, began to worm his way into our lives, slowly isolating Sarah from me, poisoning her mind with whispers of doubt and insecurity. At first, it was subtle, a casual remark here, a dismissive gesture there, but gradually the insidious nature of his manipulation became impossible to ignore. He painted me as jealous, resentful of Sarah's happiness, a constant threat to their perfect union. And Sarah, blinded by love and swayed by his manipulative tactics, began to distance herself from me, her once warm gaze now clouded with suspicion and distrust. The breaking point came during Sarah's 18th birthday party. It was supposed to be a celebration of her life, a testament to the beautiful young woman she had become, but it quickly devolved into a nightmare. David, fueled by jealousy and insecurity, orchestrated a cruel prank, humiliating me in front of all our friends and family. He claimed I had made a pass at him, fabricating a story of unwanted advances and treacherous intentions. The room erupted in gasps and whispers, all eyes turning to me, their expressions a mixture of shock, disgust, and disbelief. Sarah, instead of defending me, stood silently by his side, her face a mask of indifference. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife, shattering the foundation of our sisterhood and leaving me reeling in pain. I tried to explain, to plead my innocence, but my words were drowned out by the chorus of accusations and condemnations. No one believed me. They were all too eager to believe David's lies, to cast me as the villain in their twisted narrative. Humiliated and heartbroken, I fled the party, tears streaming down my face, knowing that my life would never be the same again. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't stay in that town, not with the weight of their judgment crushing me, not with the memory of Sarah's betrayal haunting my every step. I packed my bags, said goodbye to the few friends who still believed in me, and left, vowing to never return. 11 years passed. I rebuilt my life, brick by painful brick. I excelled in my career, traveled the world, and surrounded myself with people who loved and supported me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. But despite my success, the pain of Sarah's betrayal lingered, a constant reminder of the injustice I had suffered. And then I received the invitation. Sarah was getting married to David. The man who had destroyed my life was about to become my brother-in-law. It was a slap in the face, a final act of defiance that ignited a fire within me, a burning desire for revenge. The person I trusted most was one of them. The invitation felt like a physical blow, each embossed letter a tiny shard of glass digging into my skin. It was a declaration, a victory lap, a final, arrogant wave from the people who had rewritten my history and cast me as the villain. They truly believed they had won, that I was broken, defeated, and irrelevant. The thought churned in my stomach, a toxic brew of anger, resentment, and a chilling sense of purpose. I couldn't let them get away with it. Not this time. The sleepless nights began almost immediately. My apartment, once a sanctuary of peace and accomplishment, transformed into a war room. Memories assaulted me. Sarah's laughter, now tainted with the bitterness of betrayal. David's predatory smile, a constant reminder of his deceit. The crushing humiliation of that party, replaying endlessly in my mind.
I tried to push them away, to focus on my work, my friends, anything to escape the suffocating weight of the past, but it was no use. The injustice was too raw, the wound too deep. I started small, a tentative exploration into their lives. Social media was a goldmine of carefully curated perfection. Sarah, the glowing bride-to-be, David, the adoring fiancé, their friends and family showering them with love and support. Every picture, every post, every saccharine comment fueled my rage, solidifying my resolve. I dug deeper. Public records, old acquaintances, anything that could offer a glimpse behind the facade. I discovered that David's business ventures were built on shaky foundations, that his charming persona masked a ruthless ambition and a willingness to cut corners to get ahead. Sarah, seemingly oblivious to his true nature, remained blissfully ignorant, her trust in him unwavering. It was infuriating. How could she be so blind? After a few weeks, I knew what I had to do, what my gift to them would be. My first attempt at confronting Sarah directly was a disaster. I called her, my voice trembling slightly as I spoke. I tried to appeal to the sister she used to be, the girl who swore we would always be there for each other. But the Sarah on the other end of the line was a stranger, her voice cold and distant. She accused me of being jealous, of trying to ruin her happiness. She defended David, dismissing my concerns as unfounded accusations. Each word was like a fresh wound, reopening old scars and confirming my worst fears. The conversation ended abruptly with Sarah hanging up, leaving me feeling defeated and more isolated than ever. It was clear that reasoning with her was impossible. David had completely poisoned her mind against me. I felt a surge of despair, a brief flicker of doubt. Maybe they had won. Maybe I should just walk away and let them live their lives, however fraudulent they might be. But then I remembered the look on Sarah's face, the night of the party, the indifference, the betrayal. The memory hardened my resolve. I wouldn't let them silence me again. It was time to escalate. I decided to attend the wedding. I knew it was a risky move, a direct confrontation with the people who wanted nothing more than to erase me from their lives. But I couldn't stay away. It was my last chance to expose the truth, to reclaim my narrative, to finally have my say. I envisioned the scene playing out in my mind. Me, standing before the assembled guests, revealing David's lies, shattering their perfect illusion. But I knew I couldn't just burst in and start yelling. I needed a plan, a strategy, a way to ensure that my words would be heard and believed. So I started to document everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every shady business deal. I gathered evidence, building a case that would be impossible to ignore.
I spent hours scouring the internet, tracking down former business partners of David's, disgruntled employees, anyone who had been wronged by him. The more I dug, the more dirt I uncovered. David's empire was built on deceit and exploitation, a house of cards waiting to collapse. I compiled all my findings into a comprehensive report, a damning indictment of his character and his actions. I knew that presenting this information at the wedding would be explosive, but I also knew that it was the only way to truly expose him. The weight of my plan settled on me. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of anxiety and anticipation. I barely ate, barely slept, my mind racing with possibilities and potential pitfalls. Doubts gnawed at me. Would anyone believe me? Would I be able to go through with it? Was I making a mistake? But beneath the fear, a sense of grim determination burned. I had come too far to turn back now. My vision blurred. The glass in my hand shattered. The glass wasn't the only thing that was about to break. The shattered glass on the floor mirrored the shattered pieces of my life. I sank to my knees, the weight of the past crushing me. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about the years of silence, the stolen identity, the feeling of being erased. They had taken so much from me, and I had let them. I had run away, hoping that time would heal the wounds, but it had only allowed them to fester. Now the infection was spreading, threatening to consume everything I had worked so hard to build. A wave of nausea washed over me. I crawled to the bathroom, my stomach churning with a toxic mix of anxiety and self-loathing. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing the hollow-eyed woman staring back. Was this who I had become? A shell of a person, haunted by the ghosts of the past? Had their cruelty truly broken me beyond repair? I splashed cold water on my face, trying to regain some semblance of composure. But the memories kept flooding back, each one more painful than the last. David's mocking laughter, Sarah's cold indifference, the judgmental stares of our so-called friends. It was as if the past was determined to drown me, to drag me down into the depths of despair. I sat on the bathroom floor for what felt like hours, lost in a vortex of pain and regret. The darkness threatened to engulf me, to extinguish the last flicker of hope. It would have been so easy to give up, to succumb to the despair, to let them win. But then, a tiny spark ignited within me, a flicker of defiance that refused to be extinguished. It was a memory, a whisper from the past, a moment of strength that I had almost forgotten. It was Sarah and me, young girls, huddled together in our secret hiding place, vowing to protect each other, no matter what. The memory jolted me, reminding me of the bond we once shared, the love that had been twisted and corrupted by David's poison.
And in that moment, I knew that I couldn't give up. Not on myself, not on the memory of my sister, not on the possibility of justice. I would not let them define me. I would not let them steal my life. I would fight back. The resolve was a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I stood up, my legs shaky but firm. The reflection in the mirror was different now, no longer haunted and defeated, but steely and determined. The tears had dried, leaving behind a burning intensity in my eyes. The game had changed. I was no longer running. I was hunting. The first step was to sever all ties to my old life. I couldn't afford any distractions, any emotional baggage that might cloud my judgment. I called my boss, explaining that I needed to take an indefinite leave of absence. I packed a bag, filling it with essentials, my laptop, my phone, my research, a few changes of clothes. I left my apartment, not knowing when or if I would ever return. I needed to be free, untethered, able to move without being traced. I drove to a secluded cabin in the mountains, a place where I could be alone with my thoughts, away from the noise and distractions of the city. The cabin was rustic and isolated, but it provided the perfect environment for me to focus on my plan. I spent days poring over my research, organizing my evidence, refining my strategy. I dissected David's lies, identifying his weaknesses, exploiting his vulnerabilities. I learned everything I could about his business dealings, his personal life, his deepest secrets. I became an expert on David. I started to see patterns, connections that I had missed before. His arrogance was his weakness. He thought he was untouchable, that he could manipulate and deceive anyone without consequence. He underestimated me. He assumed that I was broken, defeated, that I would simply disappear and let him get away with everything. He was wrong. I was not broken. I was focused. I was patient, and I was ready to strike. My biggest weapon wasn't the evidence I had compiled. It was their carefully constructed image, their desperate need to maintain the facade of perfection. They had built their lives on lies, and those lies were their Achilles heel.
I had to expose the truth in a way that would be undeniable, devastating, and public. I decided to leak my report to the press. I contacted several investigative journalists, offering them exclusive access to my findings, promising them a story that would rock their world. Most of them dismissed me as a disgruntled ex-girlfriend, but one journalist, a seasoned veteran named Sarah, an ironic twist, I thought, saw the potential in my story. She was skeptical at first, but after reviewing my evidence, she became convinced that I was telling the truth. We worked together for weeks, verifying my information, building a solid case that would withstand scrutiny. Sarah was a relentless investigator, asking tough questions, challenging my assumptions, ensuring that every detail was accurate.
She became my ally, my confidant, my partner in crime. As the wedding day drew closer, the tension mounted. I knew that my plan was risky, that it could backfire spectacularly, but I was prepared to face the consequences. I was fighting for my life, for my truth, for my revenge. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, my mind racing with thoughts of what was to come. Would Sarah expose David before or after the vows? Would Sarah ever see me as a sister again? I knew that whatever happened, my life would never be the same. I was about to cross a line, to unleash a storm of destruction that would forever alter the course of their lives. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered a silent prayer. Let justice be served. The day they tried to end me was the day revenge was born. I smiled. I played their game, but I was recording. The wedding was set to be a lavish affair, held at a prestigious country club overlooking the ocean. The guest list read like a who's who of the town's elite, a collection of influential people who had all bought into David's carefully crafted image of success. I knew that exposing him in front of this crowd would be devastating, but I also knew that it was necessary. The more people who witnessed his downfall, the more complete his ruin would be. I secured a room at a nearby hotel, using a false name and paying in cash. I didn't want any trace of my presence leading back to me. I needed to be a ghost, a silent observer, until the moment I chose to reveal myself. From my hotel room, I began monitoring the wedding preparations. I used a high-powered camera to capture images of the venue, the guests, and most importantly, David and Sarah. I needed to document everything, to have irrefutable proof of their presence and their actions. I also hired a private investigator to conduct surveillance on David, tracking his movements, monitoring his phone calls, gathering any additional information that might be useful. The investigator was discreet and professional, providing me with regular updates without asking too many questions. I paid him well, ensuring his loyalty and discretion. One close call occurred a week before the wedding. David's lawyer, a slick and ruthless man named Mr. Thompson, contacted the journalist Sarah, threatening legal action if she published my story. He claimed that my accusations were baseless and defamatory, and that publishing them would cause irreparable harm to David's reputation. The journalist Sarah was shaken by the threat, but she refused to back down. She consulted with her own lawyers, who assured her that we had a strong case and that we were protected by the First Amendment. Mr. Thompson's threats only strengthened our resolve, confirming that we were on the right track. I knew that David was getting desperate, that he was starting to realize that his lies were about to be exposed. That made me smile.
Another mini conflict arose when Sarah's mother, my aunt, contacted me, begging me not to attend the wedding. She pleaded with me to consider Sarah's happiness, to let her have her special day without any drama or confrontation. My aunt was a kind and gentle woman, and I hated to cause her any pain, but I couldn't back down. I explained to her that I wasn't trying to ruin Sarah's happiness, but that I was trying to protect her from a man who was dangerous and deceitful. I told her that I had evidence that would expose David's true nature and that I couldn't stand by and let him get away with it. My aunt was torn, but she ultimately understood my position. She asked me to promise her that I wouldn't do anything that would hurt Sarah, and I gave her my word. I knew that exposing David would inevitably cause Sarah pain, but I believed that it was necessary in the long run. She deserved to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The anticipation was almost unbearable. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of nervous energy and meticulous planning. I reviewed my evidence, refined my strategy, and prepared myself for the inevitable confrontation.
I knew that I was walking into a lion's den, but I was determined to emerge victorious. I practiced my speech, rehearsing the words that I would say, the accusations that I would make, the truth that I would reveal. I wanted to be calm, composed, and convincing. I needed to control my emotions, to prevent my anger and resentment from clouding my judgment. I reminded myself that I was fighting for justice, for truth, for my own vindication. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. I spent hours studying forensic accounting techniques, learning how to trace David's financial transactions, uncovering his hidden assets, exposing his fraudulent activities. I consulted with legal experts, ensuring that my actions were within the bounds of the law, protecting myself from any potential legal repercussions. I even purchased a miniature camera disguised as a brooch, which I planned to wear to the wedding. I wanted to record everything, to have visual proof of David's reaction, of Sarah's shock, of the guests' outrage. The camera was small and discreet, but it had a high-resolution lens and a long-lasting battery. I tested it repeatedly, ensuring that it would function flawlessly when the time came. The night before the wedding, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My mind was racing with thoughts of what was to come. Would my plan work? Would I succeed in exposing David? Would Sarah believe me? Would I finally find peace? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered a silent prayer. Let the truth prevail.
The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, a picture-perfect day that belied the storm brewing beneath the surface. I watched from my hotel window as guests began to arrive at the country club, dressed in their finest attire, their faces beaming with excitement. They had no idea what was about to happen. They were about to witness the unmaking of a monster. My private investigator called. He had uncovered something huge, something even I hadn't anticipated. David wasn't just a liar and a manipulator, he was also a thief. He had been siphoning money from this company for years, funneling it into offshore accounts, using it to fund his lavish lifestyle. But even worse, the money wasn't just his, it was also from Sarah's family. He had been slowly bleeding her family dry, robbing them of their savings, their security, their future. This was the final piece of the puzzle, the smoking gun that would destroy him completely. The investigator had managed to get his hands on copies of the bank statements, the wire transfers, the Shell Corporation documents. It was all there, in black and white, undeniable proof of his treachery. The documents were devastating, the proof I needed. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a mix of excitement and anticipation. The trap was set. All I had to do was spring it. The journalist Sarah called. Mr. Thompson had made another threat, this time escalating his demands. He offered her a substantial sum of money to kill the story, promising her exclusive access to future scoops if she complied. She laughed in his face. She told him that she wasn't for sale, that she was committed to exposing the truth no matter the cost. I was proud of her. She was a true journalist, a warrior for justice. The wedding ceremony was scheduled to begin at noon. I watched as the guests took their seats, their eyes fixed on the altar, waiting for the bride to appear. I could see David standing there, looking smug and confident, completely oblivious to the impending doom. He thought he had won. He thought he had gotten away with everything. He was wrong. The music started, a traditional wedding march that seemed almost mocking in its cheerfulness. The bridesmaids began to walk down the aisle, their smiles tight and forced. And then Sarah appeared. She was radiant, beautiful, dressed in a stunning white gown. As she walked toward the altar, her eyes met mine. I could see the question in her gaze, the uncertainty, the fear. I gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod, a silent reassurance that I was there for her, that I would protect her. She reached the altar, and David took her hand. He smiled at her, a fake and predatory smile that made my skin crawl. The officiant began to speak, reciting the traditional wedding vows. He spoke of love, of commitment, of fidelity. The words seemed hollow, meaningless, given the lies that were about to be exposed. The officiant asked if anyone objected to the marriage, if anyone knew of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony. He paused, waiting for a response. The silence was deafening. I took a deep breath, stood up, and spoke. My voice was clear and strong, cutting through the silence like a knife. I object, I stated, the sound reverberating through the stunned silence. All eyes turned to me, a sea of confused and hostile stares. David's face, moments before beaming with practiced sincerity, contorted into a mask of disbelief and then fury. Sarah stood frozen, her hand still clasped in his, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. "I have evidence," I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word, "that David is not who he claims to be. He is a liar, a manipulator, and a thief. And Sarah, he is stealing from your family." I signaled to the journalist Sarah, who stepped forward, holding a thick folder of documents. "I have compiled a report detailing David's fraudulent activities," she announced, her voice clear and professional. "This report includes irrefutable proof of his embezzlement, his offshore accounts, and his systematic theft from Sarah's family." She began distributing copies of the report to the guests, the whispers and murmurs growing into a cacophony of outrage and disbelief. David lunged at me, his face purple with rage, his eyes blazing with a dark fire. "You insane woman," he screamed, reaching for me. But before he could reach me, several guests, including some of Sarah's burly uncles, intervened, holding him back. "Get your hands off me," he snarled, struggling against their grip. "This is all lies. She's trying to ruin me." Sarah, finally breaking free from her shock, stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. "Is it true?" she demanded, her voice trembling with anger and betrayal. "Have you been stealing from my family?" David's composure crumbled. He tried to deny it, to deflect, to lie his way out of it, but the evidence was overwhelming. The bank statements, the wire transfers, the Shell Corporation documents, it was all there, in black and white, undeniable proof of his treachery. He looked at Sarah, his eyes pleading for forgiveness, but she turned away, her face etched with disgust. "I can't believe I ever trusted you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You are a monster."
The room erupted in chaos. Some guests were comforting Sarah, others were confronting David, demanding answers. Mr. Thompson, David's lawyer, was frantically trying to regain control of the situation, threatening legal action against anyone who dared to publish the report. But it was too late. The truth was out. The carefully constructed facade had shattered, revealing the ugly reality beneath. I watched as David's world crumbled around him, his face contorted with a mixture of rage, fear, and despair. He had lost everything: his reputation, his wealth, his fiancée, his freedom. The police arrived, summoned by one of the guests. They placed David under arrest, leading him away in handcuffs, his head hung in shame. As he was being escorted out of the country club, he turned to me, his eyes filled with hatred. "You haven't won," he spat. "This isn't over." I simply smiled. The fallout was swift and devastating. The news of David's crimes spread like wildfire, amplified by social media and cable news. His company was investigated by the authorities, his assets were frozen, and he was charged with multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and theft. Sarah's family was devastated, not only by the financial losses, but also by the betrayal of someone they had considered a son. Sarah, heartbroken and humiliated, retreated from public life, seeking solace in the support of her family and friends. The wedding was obviously called off. I was subpoenaed to testify at David's trial, where I presented my evidence and recounted my story. The jury found him guilty on all counts, and he was sentenced to a long prison term. Justice was served. In the aftermath, I found a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years. The darkness that had haunted me for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a glimmer of hope. I knew that I could never fully erase the pain of the past, but I could move forward, knowing that I had fought for the truth and that I had prevailed. Sarah and I eventually reconciled. It took time, but she came to understand that I had acted out of love and concern for her well-being. She thanked me for exposing David, for saving her from a life of misery and deception. We rebuilt our relationship, stronger and more resilient than before. I left the courtroom, a free woman. The weight of the past had lifted. It was over. He was gone. They lost everything. I just smiled. Revenge isn't sweet. It's necessary. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.